Running Facebook and Instagram ads is somewhat simple. Running Facebook and Instagram ads that actually work, not so simple. Maybe you've experienced this yourself, or maybe you've been too intimidated to even try. I'm not gonna lie, there are many things that can affect the success of your ad. And the audience you target is definitely one of those things that can make or break the success of your ad. In this video, we are uncovering the most powerful Facebook ad targeting strategies for 2022. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Digital Marketing Podcast. I am so glad you are here today because we are talking about the Facebook ad targeting strategies for 2022. Let's just jump right into this. So let's talk about where you set your targeting in your Facebook ads. So if you haven't already, go back and watch our video or episode 45 where we talk about getting started with Facebook ads. So we kind of go through the anatomy of Facebook Business Manager. And why that's important is when you set your targeting, you want to be doing it in Facebook Business Manager. This is where you're going to have all of these options available to you. And also, when we talk about running Facebook ads, we also are talking about running Instagram ads, as they are really the same thing. So when we go into Facebook Business Manager, we select where these ads are going to run, and we can say run them on Facebook, run them on Instagram, right? So really, Facebook ads means Facebook and Instagram. So we'll just say that right here. So to set your targeting for your ads, you're going to do this in the ad set level. So in Facebook Business Manager, you have your campaign, your ad sets, and your ads. So your ad sets are inside of your campaign, and your ads are inside of your ad sets. So at the ad set, this is where you set your targeting for your ads. And what that means is when you publish it, it's basically telling Facebook, show this ad to these people. And it's going to use the algorithm to do so. So let's talk about the algorithm real quick. So we all know Facebook has a ton of information on us and all of its users. So it knows what we're into, what we like, what actions we typically take, where we're located, where we live, our relationship status. It knows all of this stuff. So the beauty of that from an advertising perspective is we can really target people that we want to see these ads. And that's the beauty of running Facebook ads, is the ability to target our ads. So that's really what the algorithm is. And in the past years, so let's go back maybe 3 to 5 years ago, it was where you really kind of wanted it to be more of like a tighter audience, a smaller audience, a more targeted audience. Now, I would say in the last 3 years, it's more of like we want a bigger, broader audience. The reason being is the power of the algorithm. The algorithm has gotten so smart, it can target and it can find and it knows who is going to take the actions you want them to take. My advice is to let the algorithm do what it does best. Like, it's really smart, smarter than us. We actually can probably do it more harm than good. So you're better off just keeping your hands out of it and letting the algorithm do what it's going to do. Now, we do have to give it a little bit of direction, right? We can't just say, okay, run it to everybody. So we have to give it some direction. So one important aspect of your audience is the audience size. So if your audience size isn't big enough, then it's not going to give the Facebook algorithm enough data to work with, or it's just not going to show it to enough people. However, on the flip side, if it's so big that now it's got to show it to so many people, it's going to take a lot longer for it to learn what it needs to do. So you want to try to find that sweet spot. Okay, so we're going to kind of cover that right now. So it really kind of comes down to, are you advertising locally or are you advertising national or internationally? So let's just start with like a national, international audience. So if you're, let's just say, advertising to just all of the United States, you want your low end, the smallest audience, to be no less than 250K, so 250,000. So nothing smaller than that. Now, this is just obviously national or international, and that's really any country for the most part, any bigger country. Now, on the high end, what you want is you want to target no more, or your site shouldn't be any more than 5% of that country's total Facebook users. So you'd have to go research that, and you can find that information and then just do the math. You want it to be no more than 5% of that country's total Facebook users. So for the US, that would be around 12 million. So you don't want your audience size to be any larger than 12 million. Now, I know that is a huge gap, 250K to 12 million, big. So the point is, these are just the ends, right? Anything in between is good, and you might have to play around with it a little bit. So let's talk about local, right? So let's say you're just a local, let's say you're a local dry cleaner, right? Well, you don't want to run an ad for people that are probably outside of a, maybe a 10, 15, 30 mile radius of your location. So you may not have an audience size of 250K. And if that's the case, then you're better off just targeting your location and leaving everything else open. Like, don't do any other interest targeting, or don't try to tighten it up. Just run your ad to the whole audience if it's under 250K. Now, let's say you live in a large city and you have in a 10 to 15 mile radius, there's, let's say, 1 million people. Well, then you do want to narrow that down a little bit, but you do want it over that 250K if you can. If it's still, if you're small and it's still like under 250K, that's okay. That just means don't further target. That's enough for the algorithm to go out and hit those 250K people and find them. So, let's say it's 50K. Then that's fine. Then we'll just target those 50,000 people and let the algorithm do its thing. So the point is a larger audience is better than a smaller audience. You're better off giving the algorithm its food. And its food in this case is audience size, is data. It likes data. So now that we have that figured out, so we kind of know how the algorithm works, we kind of know like the size of audiences we should be trying to stay in. So let's talk about some targeting options that are available to you. Now, there is an infinite number of options and different combination of options, but we're going to just kind of categorize the different things that you can select. So you can target upon location, right? So you can say, I only want to run my ad to a specific country or a state or a zip code, or maybe a radius of a location. Maybe people that are living in a certain location, or maybe people that are traveling to or in a certain location, or maybe it's people that have recently traveled to a location. So you can kind of start thinking about your product and your service and how does it fit into that. Do I want to advertise to people that don't live here? So let's say I'm in Vegas and I have a Vegas show and I want to target people, probably not people that live there. I want to target people that have recently traveled, or not recently, but that are traveling in, that are visiting, because I provide a service that a visitor takes part in. So I probably want to make sure my ad is running specifically to people visiting. Okay, so just as an example, right, how you can use your location. Also with location, you can set the radius, and I don't remember what the radius parameters are. I think it goes up to 50 miles and down to, a mile-ish. So you can get it pretty tight. That probably is pretty tight. A mile is pretty small. I will say when it comes to location, also the next one is age, gender, and languages. Depending on the type of business you are, you might see some restrictions. So if you're running like real estate ads or ads in financial or political ads, you have to specify that. And it's going to limit some of these options due to the ability to, segregate out who you're showing your ads to. So, all right, let's move on from that. All right, so you can also target age and gender. It does make sense to adjust the age, right? So if you know that there's a certain age group that is only going to use or be able to use your service, well, then obviously just select them, So usually we don't necessarily worry about the age too much, but if it's a service that an 18-year-old would never use, then we surely don't want to show our ads to them. So maybe we move it up to like 25 and over, or maybe 30 years and over or something. The next one is detailed targeting. So this is where things really get interesting. This is where you can start adding in interest. So interest targeting really, this is really the power of the ads. And you can select, what people are interested in. You could select people's behaviors. So I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head. So if we think about like people that are like certain, TV shows, or people that read certain magazines or are part of certain groups, people that are interested in certain things, like maybe you're interested in WordPress, or you're interested in photography, or, so it's just interest, broad interest, right? There's also like behaviors. So people that, or even demographics. So maybe it's a household income, and maybe it's people that have, 1 or 2 kids, people that have kids that are in ages, 1 to 5, so there's a ton of different options, right? We would never be able to cover them all. And it's actually kind of fun to go in there and see what all you can select, because there is a ton. So my advice is to select an interest and then see what the size is. What I wouldn't do is select 10 different interests in one ad set. No, just select 1, maybe 2, and then see what your ad size is and go from there. Now, the next thing when you come to detailed targeting is narrowing or layering your audiences. So what this means is you can select your main audience. I want to show this audience to, or this ad to this, let's say anyone who's interested in CrossFit. Well, that might be millions of people, and that's great. I can leave it there. But let's say I only want to show this ad to people that like CrossFit. And then let's say I want to narrow that down. So not everyone that likes CrossFit. Let's say I want to show it to gym owners or people that are involved in some, gym ownership. Well, then maybe I then layer that or narrow that to people that like CrossFit and that are also Facebook page admins, or, maybe there's one that's gym owners, or some magazine or a page that gym owners would typically like, Rogue, or Wildlife or something, where it like narrows it down. So you can narrow down your audience, and you can also exclude your audience. So let's say I only want people that, that I want to exclude anyone that, so let's say for me, I want to run ad to people that might be interested in a website. So people that are interested in, Shopify, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace. So these are people that are interested in building a website. But what I don't want to do is build or run an ad to people that are like me, web developers. So I can exclude web designers and web developers. So that way people that are labeling themselves as this individual don't see my ad, because they aren't going to buy a website from me, right? So, okay, so that's detailed targeting, running interest and narrowing the audience and layering them. All right, so the next thing is custom audiences. So this is where you can kind of take control and create your own audiences. So one powerful way is to upload a list of your customers. So if you have any type of CRM, you can export all of those people and then import them into Facebook. And now you have a list of people that you can run ad to. So you can run an ad to everybody that's on your list. And there's another thing you can do one step further, which I'll get into in a second. But staying with custom audiences, you can do, I just jump into it right now. Lookalike audiences. So let's say we upload this list of our customers that have bought from us. And let's say it's, 1,000 to 5,000 people. Well, okay, that's great if we want to target them and rerun another ad to them. But what we can do is actually create a lookalike audience based off of this list. So now what we're telling Facebook is go find another, 2 to 3 million people that have the same exact things or the same things that these people do. So they're most likely this lookalike audience, because it looks like this other audience. So it's going to go find people that have the same interests and the same demographics and the same things that the people on your list do. So it's going to find people that are likely to buy from you. So that's a lookalike audience. Another custom audience is website traffic. So let's say people are visiting your website. You can create an audience to say, okay, I want to create an audience of anyone who's visited my website in the last 180 days or 90 days. And then now you can run an ad specifically to them. You can also create an audience of people who have interacted with your social profiles. So if someone has liked, shared, commented, clicked on any of your posts or your profiles on Facebook or Instagram, then it'll put them in an audience and you can run an ad to them. You can run an ad to them. All right, I'm going kind of fast because I'm trying to get through a lot of this information. I don't want this video to get too long, or this podcast to get too long. So, okay, let's talk about some strategies, right? This is going to pretty much wrap us up with some strategies. I think one of the most powerful strategies that you can use, and this is layering purchase behaviors. So this works for people that are selling something online. So what you want to do is, what this is going to do is target engaged shoppers on Facebook. So you're going to run an ad, and I would recommend running a conversion ad. And if you're not familiar with what that is, go back and watch episode 45. But run a conversion ad. You're going to target a broad audience. So let's say your ad is to sell mugs that have some inspirational. Let's say it has some cats on it. I don't know. All right. So some cat mugs. So now you're going to target maybe cat lovers, or some broad audience. And then what you're going to do is use the narrow audience option and select engaged shoppers. It's underneath behavior. If you start searching engaged shoppers, it'll find it. What this audience is, engaged shoppers, is anyone who has clicked on a shop now call to action button in the last 7 days. So this is telling you that Facebook knows these people see ads and act on them and actually buy, or at least click on the link to buy, right? So they're interested. They're shoppers. They're online shoppers. So if you layer that with your niche of people, with your audience, then you're most likely or more likely to target people that are shoppers. That's what you want. So that's my first targeting strategy. My next one is targeting live events. So this really kind of comes into play based off of your audience, right? Or your service. So you can do people that have recently moved, anniversaries, people that are in relationships, new jobs, birthdays. I mean, really, you can do all different types of life events. So you can, if you think about your services, if you're in jewelry, you can target people who have an upcoming anniversary, or if you're a flower shop, people that have upcoming anniversaries, or people that are newly in relationships. Well, guess what? When you're in a new relationship, what are you doing? You're constantly buying things. For every month, there's a reason to buy something, right? For your new relationship, right? So you can target people that are in new relationships and for a million different reasons. Maybe it's a new relationship and there's an anniversary and there's a birthday coming up, whatever, right? There's a bazillion different ways that you could spin this, but it really kind of ties into what service you provide, right? So as a web developer, maybe, or as a marketer, maybe, an anniversary doesn't really make sense for me, but it might make sense for you. So something to look at. The next one is retargeting with these custom audiences. So just a little bit ago, we talked about these custom audiences. So people who have, I'm just going to say, visited your website or visited a specific page on your website, running an ad to them. So when we think about people on Facebook, when we're running ads, there's some different levels of audiences. And there's a cold audience, people that have never seen or interacted with you. And then there's a warmer audience, people who have seen or interacted with you. Well, if they visited your website, then they've seen and interacted with you. So they're a warmer audience, and they're more likely to take action on your ad because they're familiar with you. This is called retargeting. So retargeting, then I think every business should be running this ad, but retargeting an ad, so running an ad to anyone who has visited your website within the last 90 days. They've been to your website for some reason, so run an ad to them with whatever your call to action is, and that's retargeting. So another way to do it is if you run a shop and someone didn't complete their checkout, well, now you probably want to run an ad to them with the item that they didn't check out with. That's retargeting. Okay, here's another ad strategy. If you're trying to target small business owners. My recommendation is to use an audience of some type interested in, right? So you want to try to narrow it down a little bit because there's a ton of different small business owners. But then, and I think there's even an interest of small business owners, which you can try that one as well. But the trick here is you can select Facebook page admins. So this is going to select anyone who has a Facebook business page. So if you think about your small business owners, most of them have created their own Facebook business page, and you could target them. And the beauty is you can even go a little bit further now. They even categorize the different types of business pages. So a community page, a health page, a travel page, a sports page, a food page, so there's different page categories. You can select a page category that fits into your niche of people. So the premise here is if someone has or is an admin of a Facebook page, they are probably the business owner or connected or making the business decisions to some extent. So that's targeting them. Another one is to target people who have viewed your video. So if you're active on social, you should be using video in your social strategy, right? So reels and just videos. So what you can do is say, okay, I want to target anyone who has watched, let's say 25 or maybe 50%, at least 50% of this video. If they've watched at least 50% of this video, then I know they're at least interested in what I have to say. And it's almost like them raising their hand like, hello, yes, I am interested. So why not run an ad to them? So you can create an audience of people who have watched a specific video or videos and just run an ad to them. So that's really just retargeting based off of video views. And that's the targeting strategies. And I'm going to leave you with one more thing, and that is to always be testing your audiences. You have to always test your audiences. And once you find the audience that works, you'll know, and it all comes together. So my recommendation is when you're creating your ad sets is to not put a ton of different audiences in one ad set if you're trying to test different audiences, because then you'll never know which audience is actually working best or not. So I would recommend creating multiple ad sets and only selecting one, maybe two of those interests or that audience, and having different audiences in your different ad sets so you can see which ones perform better. And I would always recommend doing that test. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that. That's plenty of information for you to go out there and to start setting up your Facebook ads with a winning targeting strategy. I'd love to hear your results. And as always, thank you for joining me today. We'll see you in the next episode.